if you're looking, can it find you? 'Cause true love is searching too.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Kyle DeCoyan, and I am the Executive Director of the Poetry Project. And I'm so grateful to be with all of you in a year of quite particular and various time. I feel really appreciative to be gathered with you tonight and that we'll be listening together to Susan Briante and Metta Sáma. As I think about law this week and election, the following, the charade confirmation of justice, the percolation of this word originalism, and once again, astonishing violence committed by the Philadelphia police against protesters following the murder of Walter Walla Jr. I have been returning to these books by Susan Briante and Metta Sáma. I don't turn to these poems for explanation necessarily, but I do find, as Briante quotes Sáma in Defacing the Monument, that writing is not just committing words to paper, it's committing the self to reflection, to percolation, to observing, to witnessing, to taking in, to dissecting, to organizing, to assessing, to synthesizing. Before we get deep into the inquiries and provocations of these poems, I do also want to attend to some general structure for tonight. I want to thank both Susan and Metta for being with us, and I want to thank all of you who are tuning in as well. And I would also like to thank everyone at the Poetry Project who is making sure this event runs as smoothly and thoughtfully as possible, and hopefully without any malicious intrusion. Thank you to Maddie D'Angelo, Anna Kreinberg, Nicole Wallace, and Andrea Abikaram. Anna is going to drop a link for Zoom FAQs into the chat right now. We're going to keep this public chat open in case anyone wants to express accolades or admiration or just to say hello. Your microphones are switched off for the time being, and you're welcome to keep your video camera either on or off. But just note that this event is being recorded, so if your camera is on, your face may be visible at some point in the archived video of this event. In the upper left corner of the Zoom screen, I also want to note that there's a link for live transcription through Otter AI, in case anyone may appreciate having access to that feature. We're doing our best to maintain safer space within this digital perimeter, and I'll ask Anna now to share with everyone our statement of safer space. If you do receive any unwanted private communications in the course of this event, please just chat any of the Poetry Project staff identified with the appellation staff, and we'll get it taken care of right away. If we were gathering tonight, as we have for 50 years, in the shared place as well as time, we would be in the parish hall of St. Mark's Church. We are committed to continuously and critically engaging the history and future of our presence in this particular space. And as part of that, we would like to acknowledge that our venue, as well as the place I'm speaking from tonight, is built upon unceded Indigenous lands, specifically the territory of the Lenape people. We recognize the continual displacement and violence perpetrated against Indigenous people and people of color by the US, and are aware that these kinds of acknowledgements can be misused as stand-ins for actual decolonization work, which is something for us to bear in mind as we go forward in our ongoing commitment to accountability, reparation, and equity. We invite you to join us in this work from all of the different places where you are, and are sharing another resource in the chat, a map through nativeland.ca, not as an endorsement of this resource's completeness, but as a starting place for those we hope might feel encouraged to consider in new ways the histories of the places where we are. We usually set up the chairs together and put them away together in the parish hall, and I find that even as we gather in these more remote grids, our community is still finding ways to make and hold special listening space together. So thank you. We've made all of these online programs free, and we've also continued to pay poets and artists for their readings, performances, teaching, and writing. If you feel moved to offer your support for this work, Anna's placing a link to donate in the chat as well. And now I'm going to turn to introducing Susan Briante. And then after Susan's reading, I'll come back to introduce Metta Sáma. And I also want to let everyone know that Anna is placing the book order link for Susan in the chat. Defacing the Monument, Susan Briante's most recent book, continues a body of work that focuses brilliant attention to the language matter of lived environment, community, economy, and nation which shape our days, always with some consciousness of capital, though I would say with eye and heart turned as well to liberation. In previous books, Utopia Minus and the Market Wonders, we follow the permutations and investigations of speech tied to value, function, appreciation and loss, currency. And while these are all certainly present in the space of Defacing the Monument, this newest book is differently textural, filled very literally with the materials, papers, passports, court documents and records, the bullet-holed signs, which form the more governed perimeters of possibility imposed differently on us, if we can accurately and truly say an us. Language, we find again and again, is a primary material of imprisonment and deportation, because language is also the primary constitutive fabric of what we call borders, justice, and crime. Briante brings into the community of this book a number of collaborators. Muriel Rukeyser's suggestion, for example, that poetry, quote, extends the document, as well as a number of other poets, Metta Sáma, Layli Long Soldier, Brandon Shimoda, Javier Zamora, M. Norbezi Philip, each attuned differently to both the potential and limitations of poetry as work of re-inscription, a conviction that the sign and the word and the lines and paragraphs they assemble do accumulate into tangible force. Much of the material of this book is located at the place of border and has a great deal of continuity or context with Briante's work at the University of Arizona, where in addition to serving as a professor of creative writing, she's also the co-coordinator of the Southwest Field Studies and Writing Program, which brings students to the US-Mexico border to work with community-based environmental and social justice groups. I don't think we can neatly say that this is a book about that work or not exclusively about that work. And I want to bring some attention to this word defacement, because I think it has so much to do with the questions Briante poses into documentation, the work of documentation, the ethical complexities of documentation, of whose gaze we follow, of whose voice, and where the space of relation is both opened and troubled with documentation. This documentation grappled with is concerned less with giving voice and more with a kind of self-examination. It is perhaps the case that this work of poetry extends the document of the self, or goes so far as to deface the ways we have comfortably and perniciously clung to what we think of as ourselves. It is because of this remarkable spirit of transparency, accountability, and great personal stake that I would say only Susan Briante could have written this book. It is a great pleasure and an honor to welcome her back to the Poetry Project.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Can someone give me a nod? I always need it. Thank you, Metta. Thank you, Kyle, for it was an amazing introduction and an amazing reading of the work. Thank you and everyone at the Poetry Project for continuing to do the vital work that you all do in these stranger than strange times. It is necessary to have some kind of community right now. And though I really wish I was with you all at St. Mark's Church, I am absolutely grateful to be here with you all tonight. I also wanted to thank everyone who is here virtually from wherever you have come. It's not easy right now to bring our attention anywhere other than on the several and multiplying crises that are around us. it's really hard, I think, sometimes to tune into another virtual event when many of us spend a lot of our days looking at screen. So I really appreciate your whatever you can give me of your attention tonight. And I also want to thank Metta Sáma for joining us. I'm so looking forward to hearing you read, and it's really lovely to see you even as a little box on my screen. I know that you've already been given permission to turn off your videos and relax, and that to me seems like one of the very best things about the Zoom reading, that you can get cozy. And so you can also just listen to what I'm going to say as if it were just a storytelling exercise. But if you wanted some visuals, I have some that I'm sharing with you on the screen now. So I'm reading from the book Defacing the Monument. And as Kyle referenced in his introduction, part of the book comes out of the work that I've been doing with students from the University of Arizona's MFA program and a number of partners, community-based partners. And one of those partners that I'll speak about a little in the excerpts I'm going to read today is the Kino Border Initiative. And they're a binational migrant aid and advocacy organization based in Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora. I put their website up here if you are inspired to learn more about them or to donate to them. And I also will let you know that 50% of the royalties from the book, at least 50% of the royalties from the book, will go to the Kino Border Initiative. The word economic does not appear in the text of the Department of Homeland Security's webpage entitled Obtaining Asylum in the United States. It's not uttered into the court record. The word economic remains in my mouth at the back of the courtroom where I sit, scribbling on a legal pad, trying to trace a relation to the 7 men who stand before the judge, shackled at the wrists, waists, and ankles. The body is a condition, the nation another. I used to believe the document tethered the poem to the earth, to soil that one could taste, that could be nutrient to more than one. But a document can pull a nation out from under you. In the U.S. District Court, Arizona District, shackles chime like the riggings of a ship in harbor in the moments before a voyage. 7 men approach the bench. One by one, they speak directly into the microphone. To become a name in a document, a few words in a record, and 1 syllable of consent. Do you understand the rights that you are giving up, the consequences of pleading guilty and the terms of your written plea agreement? Are you pleading guilty voluntarily and of your own free will? Are you a citizen of the United States? On or about March 17th, 2017, did you enter the United States from Mexico near Nogales without coming through a designated port of entry? How do you plead to the charge of illegal entry? Do you understand the rights that you are giving up, the consequences of pleading guilty and the terms of your written plea agreement? Are you pleading guilty voluntarily and of your own free will? Are you a citizen of the United States? On or about March 18th, 2017, did you enter the United States from Mexico near Lukeville without coming through a designated port of entry? How do you plead to the charge of illegal entry? Do you understand the rights that you are giving up, the consequences of pleading guilty and the terms of your written plea agreement? Are you pleading guilty voluntarily and of your own free will? Are you a citizen of the United States? On or about March 14th, 2017, did you enter the United States from Mexico near Sasabe without coming through a designated port of entry? How do you plead to the charge of illegal entry? In an endnote to her serial poem, The Book of the Dead, about the murderous exploitation of miners in Golly Bridge, West Virginia, Muriel Rukeyser wrote, "Poetry can extend the document." For Rukeyser, poetry became a tool to expand the documentary record because the profits of Union Carbide, the parent company responsible for the gross negligence that led to the silicosis poisoning and death of anywhere from 764 to 2,000 miners, the majority of whom were African-American migrant workers, did not appear in the congressional testimony about the events, because centuries of systemic racism did not appear in the congressional testimony or newspaper reports on the disaster. Rukeyser wanted to situate primary documentary evidence against eyewitness accounts and interviews, as well as within larger systemic forces and legacies, in order to make clear that the Gauley Bridge disaster was not an exception, but another coordinate in a long trajectory of white supremacy and exploitative capitalism. I summon Rukeyser now because the words economic, family, and asylum do not appear in the court calendar on the days I attend the Operation Streamline hearings, are not uttered into the court record, because the salary of the private prison corporation lobbyist is absent from the record as well. When Rukeyser writes, poetry can extend the document, she suggests that a poem can account for a document's limits as well as its elisions and erasures. The state shapes documents to articulate narratives that benefit the policies of the state, political narratives as fixed as the wall that cuts through Nogales, blacking out landscape and sky, like the eyes of a person in a photograph wishing to remain anonymous, or a text redacted. The court calendar for Operation Streamline proceedings includes the defendant's name, date of arrest, their lawyer's name, the charges they face, their English language competency. The complete calendar for a day extends 10 pages. But it does not tell us what spiraled and scurried in the wake of these travelers, what screamed and cried, what debt, what tender, what moans. Most migrants are permitted to add only 3 words to the court record: yes, no, and guilty. In 2005, Operation Streamline began the prosecution of unauthorized migrants, often sending them to prison prior to deportation. Each migrant leaves the proceedings with a criminal record. In this sense, the process is documentary. Immigration rights advocates have called the proceedings assembly line justice because as many as 75 migrants might be brought before a judge on a single day, plead guilty to the felony offense of unauthorized entry or re-entry into the United States to serve jail time or face jail time should they be caught again. Proponents call the process a deterrent, despite evidence that most of those caught will try to cross again. Many have family in the United States and have lived here for years prior to deportation. Others flee violence or death threats. Others flee desperate economic conditions. The threat of criminal prosecution and imprisonment often compels those attempting to cross to do so in remote and dangerous terrain, increasing the risk of suffering and death, allowing our immigration policy to turn the desert into a weapon. Since Operation Streamline was first introduced, the border death rate has risen 127%, from 52 deaths per 100,000 apprehensions to 118 deaths per 100,000 apprehensions in 2010. However, it is undeniable that the proceedings are successful in their goal. They turn migrants into criminals. Despite the consultations with lawyers whom the migrants meet for the first time briefly before their hearings, despite the headsets and court interpreter, despite the judge's sometimes detailed statements about the rights that they are giving up in order to accept the plea bargain, some migrants do not follow what is happening. Do you understand the consequences of pleading guilty? The judge asks. Yes, I am guilty, the migrant says. And when the judge asks the migrant why he does not understand the question, the indigenous migrant for whom Spanish is a second language explains, it's too fast. If a line is a dot that went for a walk, then a wall is a line that divides Nogales, Arizona, from Nogales, Sonora. A deportee is a man who left his kids at the bus stop, was pulled over by the cops, could not produce a social security number, and was sent first to jail, then to Nogales, Sonora, to be handed his belongings in a large Ziploc bag from the Department of Homeland Security. A frame of words determines what one sees. A man walks through the US-Mexico border along a partitioned walkway. A man walks through the US-Mexico border in a caged walkway. US officials escort a man across the US-Mexico border in a human cage. And if I refer to him as a father of two, and if I refer to him as a man, and if I refer to him as a refugee, and if I refer to him as a migrant, and if I refer to him as undocumented, and if I refer to him as a defendant, and if I refer to him as illegal, and if I refer to him as a criminal. Metaphors make circles of our lives, a Venn diagram of contrast and resemblance. Who goes where? In this year of social media algorithms, big data, fake news, alt-fact, and news bot, documentary poetics offers a tradition and a space in which a writer can situate events or experiences within broader histories and fields of reference, without the burdens of mainstream journalism's anxiety over balanced coverage, its obsession for presenting both sides to issues that are matters of fact, its imperative to build ratings or market share, its tendency towards representing opinions that favor middle-class white stability. See NPR. Investigative or documentary poetry or prose can be a space to record, to unearth, and to help understand events as part of a larger systems and legacies. But as poets and documentarians, we should not fetishize the document. In isolation, it is meaningless, a blank slate upon which any story can be written. See WikiLeaks or Vanessa Place. The first step in extending the document might be to discern its limits and to situate it against other points of reference that expand its narrative, reveal its origins, and complicate its meaning. Rutgeiser knew this. Sometimes we need to deface the documents, to write back through them or into them, to fill in what's been left out or suppressed, to break a cage of words or reveal a cage of words in order to speak some version of a truth. In the poem West Virginia, Rutgeiser transcribes a historic marker at the site of John Brown's execution, site of the execution of John Brown, leader of the raid at Harper's Ferry, then writes in between its language, the granite, site of the precursor, execution, sabers, apostles of John Brown, leader of the war's brilliantly cloudy raid at Harper's Ferry. With her addition of sabers, apostles on the monument, Rutgeiser makes Brown, whom she describes elsewhere as that meteor, both activist and martyr. She does more than cite the official record. She responds to it. In the safe, in our bedroom closet, in our bank-owned house, 72 miles from the US-Mexico border, on the traditional land of the Tohono O'odham Nation, my husband Fareed keeps his naturalization certificate, a newspaper clipping of his naturalization ceremony, and a letter from then President Bill Clinton. Quote, I want to congratulate you on reaching the impressive milestone of becoming a citizen of our great nation, President Clinton writes. You now share in a great experiment, a nation dedicated to the ideal that all of us are created equal, a nation with a profound respect for individual rights, end quote. not a milestone. Farid calls his naturalization a, quote, defensive measure. At a moment of heightened anti-immigration rhetoric from politicians such as Newt Gingrich, former Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Pete Wilson, former governor of California, where Farid and his family were living at the time. The nation was founded on stolen lands. An ideal is an abstract concept. In an experiment, there is no certainty. On my laptop, I open a scan of my great-grandmother's enemy alien identification card, issued in 1942 when she'd been living in the United States for 37 years. The US government required the card be carried by Italian-born immigrants, classified as enemy aliens, during World War II, as part of a series of measures that included travel restrictions, the seizure of personal property, and internment. My great-grandmother signs her name on the card with an X, beneath which are written the words, her mark, and then witnessed by, and the name and address of her son. Because of her illiteracy and the war with fascist Italy, she could be deported under the current president's immigration policy, but she was not. And although I live on occupied lands, nobody asks for my papers. From my great-grandmother's illiteracy to my place in the middle class might seem like a story of American opportunity, where generations appear like stepping stones towards some goal of a mortgage and a 401k. But the documents do not make evident the structures of white supremacy and limited economic expansion that made progress possible. What rights my ancestors' luck, effort, and assimilation have afforded me. Metaphors make circles of our histories, a Venn diagram of contrast and resemblance. I do not want my family's story to be a frame bent to resemble a human cage. On the US side of the Nogales border, an unmarked white van parks just near the Di Concini border crossing. It is summer 2017, and Mexican officials in brown uniforms greet the deportees who step out of the van carrying large plastic evidence bags from the US Department of Homeland Security, containing whatever they had on them when the Border Patrol or ICE agents wrenched them from their lives in the Arizona desert or on the streets of Denver or San Francisco. In Nogales, Sonora, at the Migrant Aid Center or Comedor dining hall, volunteers from the Kino Border Initiative provide free family-style meals to the men and women waiting to cross or who have crossed and have been deported here. They show a video from the Mexican Human Rights Commission. You have the right to work, the man in a broad cowboy hat from the video tells them. You have the right to be with your family. After the video, a nun tells the men to avoid the Nogales hotels, to avoid taking taxis, to stay at the shelter, to never borrow a phone from a stranger. Volunteers from the migrant rights group No More Death helps the migrants cash the checks they received for the amount of money they carried in cash at the time of their arrest or apprehension. And the carceral system makes money from their money. A volunteer allows the migrants to use a phone to contact relatives. There are clothes in the bathroom. There is a volunteer medic to provide first aid. Black pins dot a desert map on the wall of the Comedor to show where the bodies of migrants have been found. More than 3,000 human remains have been found in the Sonoran desert, most of them migrants. A migrant tells me, we just want to work. When we ask how we can help, a volunteer at the Comedor explains, we need more shoes and backpacks. At the Arizona-Sonora Border Projects for Inclusion Work Center in Nogales, Sonora, I stand with a group of students and watch a man fit a Honduran boy with a prosthetic calf and foot. The boy lost the lower part of his leg, falling off the beast. The network of Mexican freight trains that run from Guatemala to the US border. No hero's journey, no ritual to cross, to traverse, or to oppose, or stand in the way of something. I have no idea, and I do not rush to imagine how any of it could feel, which is not a turning away, which is the opposite of turning away, to stand in my own relational presence before what might be known or not known to me, to tremble in the tangle of compassion, complicity, opacity, and relation. The Work Center provides wheelchairs and prosthetics designed for Mexico and Central America, employs men and women with disabilities, and receives money from the US Northern Command, among other donors. The boy smiles as the man wraps the plaster around the stump of his leg. I bring the boy onto the page in solidarity with Arsobo's work. And yet, as I retrace the boy's smile with my words, I want to scratch out the feel-good story of perseverance that might make bearable our complicity as US citizens in his injury. The kind of story that might be heard listening to the so-called liberal radio as we drive home from our jobs in the military, prison, industrial, educational kleptocracy we mistake for a nation. The kind of story that makes us feel just good enough to do nothing to alter our government's policies and our participation in the economics that create the conditions which force the boy to heave his body up onto the train. The screech of train brakes sounds like a scream like the sound of tons of steel and petroleum, commerce and indifference grinding to a halt. Economies will not be separated by a wall. Our appetites and negligence fuel a system as entangled as the orange trumpet vines growing up our desert fences. I think again of the human cage through which the deported migrant walks, making part of a public art installation. The poem at the port of entry that reads, quote, "The border is what joins us, not what separates us," end quote. I want poems to tell the story of the border without the comfort of resolution. I do not want to make disaster pornography, but to make our responsibility in the atrocity of the border feel unbearable. What are the aesthetics of no intelligibility, no relief? In the 5th floor apartment that serves as a migrant woman and children's shelter in Nogales, an 18-year-old girl who wants to see her father, a woman from Central America who left under death threat, a mother who fled an abusive relationship and now needs to make money to support her children and grandchildren, and an 80-year-old who wants to cross into Nogales, Arizona for the 8th time so she can sell paletas from a pushcart. A nun prods them into telling their stories to us, 4 women and 1 man visiting from a creative writing program at a state university just an hour north of them. The eldest woman stands, raising her hand as if testifying or praying. She says, "When the first President Bush came into office, he tried to make life hard for migrants, but we rose up," she explains, and stopped him. She says, as soon as she can, she will go back to the popsicle factory, to her boss. She tells us her boss's name and address, says her boss will give her a card to help her stay as soon as she can get back. And the woman who fled her country under death threat says, "We want peace." Decades of US policies and interventions in Central America that favor business interests over the majority of the population, that export gang members and failed anti-gang policies, must feel like a long, dirty war. Do you feel better when you tell these stories? One of us asks. And the woman does not answer, just keeps telling her story. We are teaching them to make earrings, the nun explains, as she brings us into another room and shows us beaded jewelry, row upon row, each piece a little memorial to every woman who has come through the shelter. What did the nun tell them about our presence, or what we might be able to do for them? Were they told we could help? Were they told we could help before the end of their 2-week stay at the women's shelter, after which they would have to find their way north or back from where they came? Were they told some faulty equation of voice and change, some scrawl of hope, like the flight of sparrows stalling and diving without knowing whose house they alight upon? What did we think we could do? Every summer for the past 3, I've gone to Nogales, Mexico, with students from the University of Arizona's MFA in Creative Writing, Southwest Field Studies and Writing program, to witness and write about migration and environmental issues unique to Southern Arizona. And each summer, as we bear witness to the conditions migrants face, we wonder, how can we amplify voices without turning other people's stories into commodities, without reaffirming the faulty myth of giving voice? We do not want to reduce the struggles of the migrants we meet to mere human interest stories. We know that writing will not be enough. The change necessary to improve the migrant women's lives feels utterly available and beyond any single transaction. We will work hard, the women tell us. Do you have bracelets? We eventually ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Something else I love so much about this book is the presence of prompts and exercises throughout. And while I hope truly that the context of much of the subject matter of this book will not be the context for us in the future, I also know that this work is going to have a lot of continued life. So thank you, truly. And now we're going to turn over to Metta Sáma. And Anna is placing several links to purchase different books from Metta in the chat. Swing at Your Own Risk, The Year We Turned Dragon, and L'Animal and Other Creatures. Metta Sáma's Swing at Your Own Risk is full of transmission, embodiment, score as an account, score also as in the choreographies and composition of speech at intervals, that kind of score where language needs to land or could within an everywhere harrowing context. And it is a book that is also full of the miraculous prophecies of daily survival. When we started bringing together events for this season at the Poetry Project, we were turning around different possible frames and kept returning to these questions of utopia, utopian opposition, utopian counter possibility, but also failures of utopia, the failure of the idea, the many differently conceived ideas which have failed at times individual needs as well as collective needs in pursuit of some kind of false equanimous universal. In the poem Finding Utopia, Sáma writes, "The past is a desperate hound, a counter-revolutionary act, utopia. Perchance the world was not built in a day, but utopia will make us great again. In utopia, no one will feel impact, no economic downturn, no gender bias, no racial disharmony. Rally, rally, forget all about it." I find in this poem the clarity of critique that runs throughout Sáma's work. The poems perform a kind of surgery or magic on the language of ideals, what we think of specifically in American English as liberty or equality or freedom, revealing within the course of poetry that all of this smoke and mirrors patriotic speechifying have enacted, in fact, a very rigid and deeply violent hierarchy on our lives. I think what makes Sáma's work so brilliant, brilliant as in prismatic, luminous with scattering, I think what makes this work so brilliant is the poet's insistence on the simultaneities of difference, vicissitude, this plain fact that we are not unified. And unification is not perhaps what we are really after, at least within this sense of obedience with which the word is so frequently foisted upon us. What Sáma presents instead is a chorus of powerful and distinct variation, harmonious, cacophonous, loving, wounded, combustive, struggling. And it is within the incredible friction of these poem spaces that we find some truer possibility of freedom, always engaged too with a kind of earthliness, a deep listening to that pre-language language of place and ground. Metta Sáma is the author of 4 chapbooks and 2 full-length books, the most recent of which is Swing at Your Own Risk, published by Kelsey Street Press, though that's not the work we will be hearing tonight. I'm really grateful that Metta has chosen to share different work within the particular proximities of this present context. Metta is a parent in the pandemic who has recently begun writing books for young children, managing editor of Doubleback Books, senior fellow of Black Earth Institute, member of the editorial advisory board of Black Radish Books, and founder of Artists Against Police Brutality, Cultures of Violence. Metta has been reflecting on the parallels between climate change and changes in the physical body. I'm so incredibly excited for the poems we're about to experience together. Please join me in welcoming Metta Sáma to the Poetry Project.
Did I just unmute myself? Okay. Thank you, Kyle, for that introduction and for Susan's introduction. Both are incredibly generous and brilliant in their own right. And thank you so much, Susan, for sharing your space with me and for sharing your wisdom, your thoughtfulness. You're doing the kind of documentary poetics that I think is self-reflective as it needs to be, and is a teaching tool for a multitude of things, including how to be tender and compassionate and unflinching all at the same time. So thank you for that. So I'm going to read a little bit of something, and then I'm going to do some other reading. But for now, I'm just going to read a little writing. 28 years ago today, my best friend died at the age of 19. So I'm going to start with a poem that I wrote for her 20 years ago. From under that yellow half moon, late risen and swollen, for Angela. And when I dream of Tennessee, I see a young man who believes in harmonicas and dusty feet, women in scarves, blues dragging heavy through tongues of men. When I dream of Tennessee, Bibles fluster desperately evangelical. They surround me, green and multitudinous. I can't ask for help. The Bibles have replaced faces of the young. Only once a red Bible haunts. When I dream, mountains walk into the ocean, fish rise from the sea, hands baptize my unrelenting forehead. When I dream, it is your death. You lie on a silver bed with no mattress, only blue-plated springs. Your eyes move with mine. The springs move with the effort of death. Silver wraps around and engulfs me, lines the thrust of my face I cannot see. When I dream, you ride through tunnels with your ass out the window, flashing any passersby not willing to see. Wet roads built like snakes. 2 girls take curves like death, fierce and quiet. I dream of stars thrown at dogs. We chase each other up trees, rise through dirt like wild onions. When you dream, girls jump railroad tracks in baseball fields, mercurial. You dream gospel choirs, ice storms, bare feet plunging through unforeseen snow. When we dream, you squeeze me through colanders or grate me so fine, I'm only cells within cells, veins liquid and lost, never quite fitting. The wind doesn't blow anymore when I dream. When I dream, the pastor presiding over your funeral no longer cites my name, no longer anticipates my return. When I dream, I drop into the ocean, fish myself from the sea, wind towards heaven, towards you, love, hopeless as kudzu strangled trees. Friend, when I dream, I know you are not death, only Tennessee mountains valleying quietly around. Sometimes Angela, my best friend, still visits me in dreams, and they always have the same heavy feel of deep surreality. When I wake, I am hungry and mournful, bitter, and reaching for a phone to call someone who is no longer here. These days, I am happy that she is no longer here, not here to witness the bounty of global news, the stories constantly streaming in our eyes. Police killed unarmed citizen. Police opened fire at a rally. Police-backed militia killed peaceful protesters. Government-sanctioned officers killed reporter. Police disappearing seemingly endless numbers of people. Government officials covering the killings or forcing new laws to justify them. It is a deadly world we inhabit. As a kid, we feared the Atlanta child kidnapper as we thought of him. We were young enough to envision someone rolling up on us, seducing us with the gift of language, arms growing long enough to snatch us from the sidewalk, deposit us in the back seat and speed off. Surely we knew the kidnapper was also a murderer, but at 7, 8, 9 years old, we couldn't fathom dying. Dying was something old things or dumb things did, like mean and ancient teachers or dogs running after a group of children rushing across the street. At that age, we hadn't met anyone who was close to dying, hadn't found the salting of slugs or the mirror burning of ants to be a curiously sadistic game to play. We had no idea that one day a 6-year-old child would be murdered in her sleep, shot by police officers who entered her grandmother's home, armed, trigger ready, burning to be badass on television, shooting without hesitation in an apartment filled with sleeping people. Nor had we any idea that one day a 12-year-old child would be playing with his BB gun in a public park, only to encounter real police rushing out of his police vehicle, police issued gun in hand, finger burning to destroy the optimism of Black freedom. Our friend Sean owned a BB gun. At 10, he let my brother play with it, and my brother accidentally shot Sean in the buttock. We all laughed and laughed as Sean yelped and yelped. Angela's father was a police officer. Daily, he saw Sean walking up and down the hill, toting his prized BB gun with him. This is not a story that begins, oh, it was the 80s. Yes, it was the 80s, and loads of kids had BB guns, as they did in the 90s and aughts and beyond. And they carried their little guns with them everywhere, proud to be a gun-toting kid living in a world that glorified guns. A year after a young Black man was shot by a police officer in a big box for examining a pellet gun, police officers in a different state defended a young white man who walked into a mall carrying a loaded AR-15 assault rifle. X made a poor decision. It was basically a soldier who wasn't thinking. If you think about it, everything worked beautifully. No one was hurt, a police spokesperson said. The assistant police chief responded, within 2 minutes, we had officers on the scene. The first 2 responding officers made contact, gave him a verbal command, and the subject complied, and they took him into custody. It's hard to stomach white declarations of Black Lives Matter, and this is why I'm happy that my best friend didn't live long enough to see this iteration of this world. When we were kids, my sister, a tiny little thing with an inferno-sized temper, myself, knock-kneed with a noticeable limp, thanks to my uneven leg lengths, and my best friend, the only fat person most of us knew, would often find ourselves on the other end of verbal attacks by fickle friends. My parents would sing, "Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you." I always corrected it in my head, words will never fail to hurt you. 40 years later, I still smart every time I see a white person wearing a Black Lives Matter mask, every time they make a post about someone stealing their BLM yard sign. The conversations about George Floyd, as if Eric Garner never lived. The conversations about Breonna Taylor, as if Ayanna Stanley Jones never lived. The conversations about Ahmaud Arbery, as if Trayvon Martin never lived. Words made to erase hundreds of years of lives. My father once told me that humans have the curious incapacity to care about a cause until someone they love is deeply affected by that cause. The cause called Black Lives Matter made it clear that Black people don't matter, not even when they die, unless their death goes viral. When I was a child, I hadn't yet learned the delightful art of bitterness. Every day was an opportunity to be someone nearly new, to learn new things, to test my belief that I was indestructible, that my best friend was indestructible. It seems to me that is every child's right to believe such a thing, to test such a belief, to push their mortality to its limits. As a child, my sister, myself, and my best friend made a promise to each other to parent our children better than our parents parented us. We were young and burned by our parents' rages, by their closed ears, by their refusal to let us be, to let us drift into the world, to get lost, to not care about what people thought of us. My sister and I lived long enough to have our own children, to reflect on the way our parents raised us. My best friend did not. But she did live long enough to enter into a dreamscape with me, a longing to belong to a world of our invention, filled with people we invited, we desired, we believed in. That longing has never left me. So tonight I'm going to read poems from The Year We Turned Dragon, which kind of reflects on that longing, an excerpt of which was published by Brenda Ajima's Portable Press at Yo-Yo Labs. This book began, as does most of my work, as research into plantations, but moved outward to an interest in leaders of communes. Plantations, like communes, offer a small glimpse into an attempt at utopic living. Each contains layers of violence, of subordination. The communes are unique. Individuals choose to live in communes, choose to follow the words of typically a singular voice, most often a male, more often than not, a white male. What draws people to these leaders, often tempestuous, willful men who terrorize and tempt with a vision for a perfected future? It was the year we turned dragon, snaked our way through harsh fields of sunflowers, petals landing on us, heavy and dirty, and we were beginning to lose sense of direction, became distracted by time, the oblivious faces of sunflowers watching themselves shed, become bald. We wanted to feast on each other first, wanted to put our own limbs in our bodies, bite into our elbows and knees, crack every joint between our teeth. We were hinged things, teetering between upright and indirect flight. One of us burst into a wing, others settled into envy, into flimsy hardness. We were hungry and had only our bodies to devour. We ran from each other, into each other, until our feet gave way, until our jaws opened as fire. We were scaly things, final, rolling mid-air. Soon we'd learn to open our mouths to what we could only guess. Welcome to the future, leader tells us in the first clearing, a large animal leashed to his wrist, his mouth yawning, a blood-red silence. We are masked and naked, our faces covered, our bodies uncovered. The men shiver and turn their hands into fig leaves, and leader's words a whip unleashed. The men's hands suddenly stricken with branch-shaped wounds, the women's stomachs hanging or taut and nearly not there. No movement, just soft. Where are our clothes? A woman's voice in the sunlight. Leader's words a cleaver, and her mouth a terrible slumped animal. The leashed cat yawns, and the children won't stop hopping around, chasing each other in circles. They have become dogs. We stand naked, our faces hot and liquid. Welcome to the future, leader says to the woman, and sets his animal loose. When leader found the first child sleeping in the dumpster, he grabbed him by the throat and placed his lips to the boy's temple. This is how he collected us, the fallen, the wanderers, the hapless seekers, the churchgoers. Leader would arrive as tambourine, melt into our hands, stain the palm with his branded teeth, his mouth talking through the stretched skin of drums, his parched lips moistened on all the innocent spots, the wart-covered cheek of one parishioner, the swollen ankles of a man who hadn't walked in decades, the scalp of a woman with shingles, the shrouded eyes of another. He touched us with his reverent kindness and collected us, our pieces no longer trash. We trailed behind him, followed his golden feet, and never, he promised, will we call him leader. The blood days frightened us the least. To be cut across the veins is to watch the moon sickle and slice the sky. We open our bodies to leader. Blood escapes the prism that is our bodies. On the blood days, we fill holes with our waste, and leader drinks of that new earth. No famine, he'd say, no famine. The moon hangs lower and continues to cut the wretched sky. Before leader takes me into his mouth, I am holy. My mother's hands did slide between my legs. Her soapy fingers did edge between my buttocks. Underneath my arms, her hands, her nails created crescents in my skull. My mother cleansed my body, kept me clean until I was old enough to erase the dirt stuck beneath my knees, the sweat alive and shining behind my ears. I was clean and holy. A preacher once slipped one hand beneath my neck and laid the other against my chest, pushed me beneath water. I was another kind of clean and holy. When I rose again, I was holy and married to God. I had never pressed my mouth against another's, but I knew holy love, clean love. I was clean. Before leader took me into his mouth, I had my own name, a clean, holy name. I was Matthew, God's gift. I was holy. My flesh is now singed. The mouth of leader is all my body remembers. Leader's tongue, buds of unholy names beneath my fingernails. The wife who is my wife, leader handed this woman to me and said, "Take her now, she is yours." She is a singed thing too. Leader's damp fingers in my wife's mouth. My eyes have no purpose anymore. They see only leader's hands everywhere. Leader's unholy mouth burnt into the base of my unholy back. To look in the face of leader is a terrifying thing, a trembling thing. In this room, a terrible trembling, and it does not come from the unspoken words resting dutifully, patiently in my belly. The trembling walls wail, and only I seem to hear them. But leader's voice rises to a high pitch, and the paper in his hands tremble and emit a choking cough, persistent. The bass notes deep and dank and dangerous. He throws the pages to the top of his desk, and the desk trembles, a roar uncaged, a lion's head pushing from the desk, the paws beginning to thunder on the floor. The entire universe seems to have collected in this room. A trail of ants march from the mouth of leader. His fifth wife carries offerings of bread shaped like, but, but, her eyes butterflying and splitting into many winged beast, her hands and arms branched and shaking. Leader watches my words, once ink, now pebble and boulder roll from the page, building mountains of words. There is a small entryway, a cave I can just barely see. I am a silent bolt of lightning on a dry night. I spark and flute and shine a wallowing cry. How did I imagine getting away with this crying, this written report of leaders' lack of transformation? Who did I imagine sending this track to? What figure, what new savior? I close my eyes against leader's savagery. Quietly, I enter the cave and keep entering the cave, light throwing itself against the stones, heat refracting back, my words burning ash edges of chipped light into my body. I will die as any other man who is ambition. I will die with 30 pieces of silver in my mouth. I will die with gold coins on my eyes. I will die with no hunger, no hunger. I will die filled and flesh clean, lithe. Leader will call me traitor, Judas. I will call him liar, dragon. Skins made of pounded copper, flattened gold mica stolen from lands he called empty of people. People, leader said, have souls, and all souls follow leader. We killed those who refused to flee, to give us their lands, and leader called us holy warriors. We drank the blood warm from the dying bodies. We crushed their bones and fed on their marrow. Dragons, leader said, will all be dragons. Too many unrecorded years have come and gone, and I am no longer the boy raked from the trash. I am a man. I never believed in dragons. I am a man. Leader may no longer eat from my flesh. I am a man. I will die covered in my sins. I will die a man. I will die with no shame. I will die a man. I am a man. I never believed in dragons. After the transformation, leader says, in the land of dragons, we will have no races, no creeds, no tribes, only one nation, the nation of dragons, he says, no races, and we will be ageless, sexless. His sweat falls from his top lip into my mouth. We will be one nation, leader says, and pushes himself further into me, more of himself than is himself. Inside, I moan, no, no, no more. But my mouth does not betray me. My mouth knows its place and moans, yes, yes, yes. Inside, I remember the fields of sunflowers. Inside, I remember my own name. The outside world is lost to me. I gasp and gasp. Leader buries my mouth with his mouth. He pushes ahead and calls upon himself, dragon, dragon, dragon. The story of death. Once upon a time, there lived a young woman who wanted more than anything in the world for death. She had tried many times to call death, created many spells and many chants, lit many candles and buried many stones. She had sacrificed the family dog too, or so she thought. But the morning after she pierced his throat with her father's favorite carving knife, the dog was sitting on the porch with the morning paper, speckled with blood, on the front stoop. She had stolen 2 entire chickens from her neighbor's lawn and carried each to the park, choking their necks all the way, then threw them, one after the other, onto a pile of whiskey-soaked newspapers and clothes she no longer wished to wear. She lit a match, tossed it into the whole pile, and walked away. The chickens wearily marched behind her, clucking their disapproval of being carried so far away from home. She wanted death so badly that she helped the doula and midwife deliver her mother's new baby, so she could chant a death spell during the delivery. The baby breached, yes, then spilled out, wide-lunged and heavy. Now the child sat on her legs, yelling, "Giddy up!" hitting her with a belt she used weeks ago to hang, unsuccessfully, the family cat. Just yesterday, she tried again to slice her own wrist. Then she put a gun against her temple and pulled the trigger, her body already loaded down with pills promised to bring about death, swallowed with her mother's illegally obtained moonshine, a liquor, the locals said, would put a hole in your gut. She woke the next morning muddle-headed and stiff-mouthed, a bullet hole neatly widening the bathroom wall, her gut feeling wonky but hole-free. Death eluded her, and she so longed for him and his heavy silk coat embroidered with bright red velvet stitching. She longed to examine his brilliant red smooth fedora, to finger the long obsidian feather she'd heard was given to him, fresh every morning, from a very large raven that had cast a spell in his feathers to keep death at bay. So many had cast spells to keep death from their doorstep, but she wanted death close. What else could protect her from the boys who hounded her on her walks to and from school? Her mother promised her that the boys would grow out of it, as had her father, but she had yet to tell them about the touchings. So desperate to be let alone, she would even take death's lesser beings, the many smaller deaths that would eventually get her closer and closer to death. But death and death refused her. And then she grew older and met the man the people called leader, who introduced her to many lesser deaths. Then she begged for death's mercy and begged and begged and begged. We return to the field of buried clothes and find a cemetery of sunflowers, yellows speckled and browned faces, blackened necks, broken, broken. Their drooping browned manes stagger in their stooping. Unerect, they reach for somewhere. Where are they? They are us. Are they us? We lean towards them. We lean towards ourselves, necks broken, faces burnt, arms drooping. Our souls, one mildeweed crown, the buried clothes beneath them, evidence of a war lost. That's it for me. Thank you so much again to the Poetry Project for your generosity of having us here. And to Susan, again, thank you so much for sharing the stage with me. And to all of y'all out there whose names I can see, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Metta. It was such a generous reading. Friend, when I dream, I know you are not death. It was just incredible. Thank you so much. And I loved, I really, really loved and appreciated hearing the two of you together. We have still a bunch of events coming up. Tomorrow we have Yun Yi and Juliana Spar reading and talking together. And then on Friday, we're hosting a reading and conversation with several UDP pamphlet authors on radical learning models. That will be with Nicole Cecilia Delgado, Adjoa Gargi and Zinga Greaves, Magdalena Zarofsky, and the Kunchi Collective. And then next Thursday, the Thursday after the election, we host Karen Barad giving a talk on touching the stranger within, the alterity that therefore I am. So a bunch of exciting stuff coming up. This reading was sensational. Folks are welcome to turn their cameras and their microphones on now. We'll keep the Zoom open until about 9:20 if folks want to share admirations and appreciations and hellos. Thank you again.